So how do you do it if you don't already know how? It's because you know how to think. What up, people? Okay, so anyway, on Instagram today, or the other day, I had a young man, I believe named Brian, who appears to be an RX-7 aficionado, write me something I want to share because it talks about how do you build your own cars? How do you have confidence that? Where do you go? So, here we go. He writes, "Hey Casey, I used to watch a bunch of your videos on VinWiki and was inspired to build my own car to race in a local series like I'd always wanted. But as I'm going through it, my concerns are really growing. I'm touching literally every component of this car, minus some suspension arms and the body, and swapping the entire drivetrain. Hell, I'm tuning it myself as well. I know it's tame compared to building a Batmobile with an actual turbine engine, but how do you deal with it mentally? For me, it's really nerve-wracking worrying about what may fall apart at speed no matter how many times I recheck things. I don't know if you just have nerves of steel or full confidence or something. It just seems crazy to jump into something you've almost completely built yourself. Plus, this car is a lot more powerful than anything I've ever driven. 400 horsepower, 2,800 pounds. RX-7 on 245s isn't confidence inspiring. What's wrong with that, man? But it's affordable. Sorry if I sound whiny or anything, but I figured I'd ask and maybe it'd make a decent video on your own channel. Well, dude, I think it will make a decent video. So, having confidence for a young person building something you've never done. How do you do that? How do you get into it? And let's just start with this. No, there's no perfect school for you to go to do that to learn confidence. The thing about schools is they'll be confident in giving you a piece of paper. That doesn't mean you can actually do anything. That's a placebo knowing you can. There's these amazing things called libraries, and there's amazing smart people all over the world that can teach you something. Now, I'm not knocking schools. I'm saying that to prove a point for you. Whenever somebody does something new, it's their first time. When we went to the moon, it was our first time. When Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier, it was the first time. So, how do people just keep doing this, and how do they have confidence in it? I'm making all kinds of noise with this mic, shoot me. So anyway, and the nature of figuring these things out and having that confidence and growing is something that I bring here at Genius Garage. Because all the stuff we have here is crazy! There's a BD5 microjet, like world's smallest jet that you can build yourself right there. First time for the young person. There's an 840 horsepower at the wheels Indy car here that makes 6,000 plus pounds of downforce. And the Dinosaur, don't hate me dinosaur geeks, I know it's a pterosaur, it's not the same thing. The pterosaur on the ceiling is the first time anybody made a full-scale flying one. So, confidence, nerves of steel, being crazy, I understand. So let's say for any young person, you've got to start somewhere. And for you with the RX-7, maybe you haven't built go-karts in the past, maybe you haven't done radio control, all of these things. It really just comes down to paying attention to what you've done. You know, a car is a relatively simple machine. It only has so many components and so many things. It has a frame or a shell. That's its structure. It has suspension hung off of it and pivoting. And the tires need to be pointing certain ways. And things need to be so springy and dampy to make it work. I know I'm oversimplifying this. And there needs to be an engine that stays in one place and runs the way it should to make torque and power and turn spinny gears and things to make the tires go, and brakes that work. And then you have to have a cockpit so you can actually control all this stuff well. And then you need to be bolted in it well enough and potentially safe enough if something happens. That's really it. That's a car. That's it. So if you're working on something, let's say you're not even fabricating, let's say you're just bolting things together. Well, generally speaking, a production-based car, which yours is, they're built really rough and rugged because they're made to last 100,000 plus miles on the street, getting beat, getting hammered over potholes and things like this. So frankly, they're overbuilt compared to a race car. And generally speaking, notice I said generally speaking, the suspension components and everything, as long as they're in good form, they're not loose, they're not coming apart, they're not completely trashed, are going to be strong enough to handle the rigors of basic racing. Okay, I know everybody out there is going to be like, well, Casey, there's like, I can think of 47 million cars where this will break and that'll break. Yeah, okay, we know. I'm not blanket stating this. But production cars are built really beefy. And your RX-7 is a known quantity. There's people out there who have already raced them and can tell you where the weak points are and what you need to do to look after to make it work. So, one, you should learn from everybody else's development and mistakes. It'll give you a great baseline as to where to start and should give you confidence. At least confidence to go out there, test it, race it. As a testing driver, pay attention to it to know you're going to be in the ballpark, okay? Everybody else is going to get you in the ballpark. So then the rest of the build and everything comes down to your talent and or paying attention as a mechanic and fabricator. If you're welding and you've never welded before and you don't know what you're doing, then chances are you're going to have a crappy weld with bad penetration and not the right temperature, and it's not going to stick. If you don't understand basic fabrication or basic engineering and triangulating things and understanding box structure and torsional rigidity and all, you might make a structure that sucks, okay? That's also not great. You need to have basic mechanical engineering understanding. Basic. You can learn it from books and YouTube videos, okay? I'm not telling you to get a 4-year degree. Have a seat of the pants feel. Make stuff. You know, in terms of the suspension, the motor mounts, everything else goes, you know, you got your baseline from what people have said, but it really comes down to what you've done as a mechanic. Do you have all the nuts and bolts in place? Are they torqued to roughly where they need to be? Do you have thread lock where you need it to be? Are you using the correct hardware, the correct locking washers, or the correct locking nuts, whether those are metal locking nuts or they're a nylon locking nut? Do you have enough threads showing? Are you using good practices with your hardware, with things being lubricated, with things moving without having interference? Is everything tight and right and aligned properly? These are all things that you have control over knowing. So if you use good workmanship throughout, good craftsmanship, good fasteners, good hardware, good basic engineering understandings, even if you build your car a little heavier, you know, maybe you've kind of beefed up and upgraded some things. You don't want to make it like a farm implement trailer or something like that heavy. But even if you overbuild it a little bit, you've got a baseline that should be safe. And that's what I did as a young person building my race cars and whatnot. I would balance, do I know what I'm doing? Do I need to seek help with this? Am I certain this works? And if you don't feel good about something, then it's up to you to figure out if it's going to work. Talk to people, beat on it, but test it in an environment where your consequences are minimized and your risk is minimized. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's up to you to know everything's tight and that everything's done right, that the brakes are bled properly. And that's going to be readily evident right away. And you're going to test it. Maybe you'll autocross it. Maybe you go to a test session at a road racetrack and take it reasonably easy. In the sense that instead of going out and being 10/10ths, let's say your car drives pretty well between like, at 6/10, it's kind of docile and easy, and at 9.5/10, you're pushing it, and then that last 1/2 it's really on the ragged edge. So then drive at 6/10, so it feels like a race car, and it's not so slow that it's crap and you don't learn anything. But at 6/10, you've got 3 to 4/10 of a safety margin. Hello, and you're going to know. And then when you go drive your car and you test it, do so in an intelligent way, not in a, yeah, I'm a young person, and I think I'm a race car driver, and somebody's going to magically give me a lot of money so people think I'm cool. Don't do that. You go out and test in an interesting, in an intelligent way. Like when Gina's Garage, when we get a car going that's new, I tell them the first time it's out, I may only go out for 1, maximum 2 laps. You go out, make sure nothing gets loose or falls off of it. You're not driving like a buffoon. Maybe you're heat cycling brakes or something, and you come in and check everything. Okay? Pretty good test. And then you go out again, and it's up to the driver to be a testing engineer. You're not actually having fun at this point. You have an important job to test a vehicle that is requiring every bit of your engineering knowledge and paying attention to what's going on and putting this car in a place, and also being talented enough to react that if something were to break in the suspension or whatnot, that you're not putting the car or yourself in a bad position, that you would be able to get away with it unscathed, fix the car, and go back out. So something else to think about. And then, you build up. You build up to going full speed. You find that confidence first in your workmanship, but then in testing the car to know it works, that you safety wire all the things that you need to, that the tires are running right, that nothing funky is happening, there's no weird clunks or, pop, things are loosening or feeling wrong. And it's like, when I take students out kart racing for the first time, I say, okay, here's the kart, here's where it's at, go out, feel how it is, get an initial feel. If it feels good, and this is a cart, they're pretty simple, pretty known entity. If it feels good, it probably is, and keep going. If you're getting tired, if you're completely out of the zone, or you don't feel like you're in the groove, it's perfectly fine to come in. Or if the car feels wonky, it might be wonky, so come in. Testing a car is testing. It's not racing, and it's not happy-go-lucky fun time. So make it testing. And that's just the way it is. Because when people see it on the internet, YouTube videos, pictures, Genius Garage stories, VinWiki, whatever I do, they see excitement and glamour and yay. But what they don't realize is for every 10 minutes spent on the track, there's potentially 1,000 hours of work that goes into it. And all that work just goes to build confidence to where you're going. Every time a race car goes out on the track, myself and the students, we look at everything from all of the rotating belts, make sure nothing's moving, make sure nothing's loose. We're checking safety. We're checking the steering linkage. We're checking all the pedals and the brakes and all of the lug nuts. All the spark plug wires are in place. There's nothing weird with the ignition distributor. There's no fuel leaks. There's nothing loose. Every single time the car goes out. And truthfully, do we really necessarily need to? Not every time. But what if you don't? It's just, you get a nature of feeling and having confidence in the big things and then just giving the quick check over all the little things. And even if your car is super reliable, that at least instills confidence in the crew and the driver so that the car can go out on track and do what it's supposed to do. Drive 10 tenths and go as fast as you can and develop it, make it faster, and win, right? But that seems somewhat overly professional and simple. And in a way it is, but let me be honest about when I was young. I didn't have all the resources in the world. I didn't know everything about race car setup. But I at least knew what could theoretically be safe or safe enough and make good judgment calls. And those judgment calls relate to when you're building it and before you go to a track, as well as when you're at the track. So when you're building it, things need to not come loose. You need to be able to control the car well. You need to not fall out of it. You do your safety gear, but you never plan on using it. Because if you do a job well and don't wreck the car and don't build a piece of crap that's too hard to control or you're going to go off the track with, then you're not going to need it. Safety gear should only be in case. Your best way in life and professional and cars and everything to be safe is to not get in an accident and to do a job right. Okay? So you build it as best you can and you weigh things. You can't necessarily afford everything, but it has to be a very good car to control. And the same goes through when I go to test things. And when you're testing, you as a driver need to keep your excitement level. Even if you're young and it's exciting and amazing and you feel invincible, well, that's cool and all, but that's when young drivers start getting hurt or cars have a problem. You still should come in after a couple laps, check everything, and be methodical. And racing, when you do it really well, isn't actually fun. I'm not kidding. It's not fun to drive a race car at the limit that's like this and insane. It's rewarding. There's a difference. Because it's such a big task with so much at stake, from money to your own personal safety, the safety of others, and everything going on, that if you're having fun, you probably shouldn't be in the car. And all those race car drivers are like, yeah, it's fun, I have a great time. Well, they're either idiots, don't understand the definition of fun, or are just lying to you. Doing something like that is rewarding. It's not necessarily fun. Fun is driving a go-kart where there's no consequences and nobody cares. I hope that makes sense to you. But how do you know? I can't tell you specifically how you know, other than to use good process, be paying attention to everything, do everything right, and if you don't know you're doing it right, then you need to find out. And especially when you're young, you need to test things in a controlled environment and putting yourself in a position that you minimize consequences of risk or if something goes wrong. And then as time passes and you do more and more projects, you get more time on the track, more time as a builder, you will gain confidence, not in the cars you build, because you're never going to be confident if you're a really good builder or engineer. I'm not confident in any race cars, even if they're perfect. I have no confidence in them. And that's the best way. You're not going to be confident in them. But you're confident in yourself as a builder, as a mechanic, as a fabricator, as a driver, as a testing engineer. If you're confident in all those things that you do and you always implement good practices, you have the best chance of success. I'm not going to guarantee it, because here's part of the matter. I have had plenty a race car or race engine or something fail, not because of fault of my own or the students in Genius Garage or the car, but because of a fault of the part. Maybe I got an aftermarket part that was machined badly. Maybe the metallurgy was not right in the part that was used. It looks perfectly good, goes on, but it's a piece of junk. The metal's too soft, or it's too hard and too brittle. Or, you know, a valve on an engine was manufactured badly where the valve comes up to the stem and busts off. I've had a brand new race engine that I built as a young person, perfect, destroy itself 30 minutes into running it because a valve head just popped right off because it was manufactured badly. And I'm totally screwed. That can happen. Same thing that can happen to brakes and suspension. And that's scary. My first race car, the 1957 Devon, it wasn't that fast. It didn't even have sway bars. It had little bias ply, skinny, treaded Dunlop tires from the 50s. So I was probably doing like, I don't know, 115, 120 down the back straightaway. But I remember the last race I did with it, I'm pretty sure was at Road Atlanta. And just hauling the mail, you know, the engine's spinning really high RPM for one of those old engines. And I got my head out in the Airstream, I'm driving this thing with the wood wheel, and I'm thinking, you know, you're on the straightaway for a long time because they're not that fast. And I'm thinking to myself, man, if the suspension broke right now, this would be really ugly. But I kept driving fast. It's just that I really paid attention to that because it would be ugly. And that's where racing drivers and test drivers usually get to the point where they want to get out of it, get out of that industry, because there's a lot of things you can't control. And if you know too much, it might freak you out. Or if you're driving really, really fast, you just have to learn how to turn that off in your mind so you can drive fast and rest easy that you've done the best you can with the building, the engineering, and the process thinking. So I hope that helps you a little bit. But truthfully, I have no trust in any motor vehicle at all, ever. Or airplane, or motorcycle. Frankly, I don't trust our toaster at home with my wife. I literally unplug the toaster every day before I go out of the house. And I will walk around the house and make sure every item that I don't trust is unplugged. Because I don't even trust electronic devices. I've seen them just burst into flames for no reason. And I don't feel like our house burning down because a stupid $50 or $100 toaster just decided to fall apart. And no, I'm not OCD. I just want to have a good future. Which, frankly, it's that trait and quality why I've been able to be successful in racing, in building cars, and mentoring and teaching young people at Genius Garage. I have trust in good standards, in good thinking, in good workmanship, in teamwork, in good engineering, in good fabrication, but I have no trust in a machine or its systems. And by staying that way, you're always vigilant at keeping it moving forward the direction it needs to go and having the best chance of success. In terms of me as a driver getting over that in the car, I gotta be honest, man, there comes a point when you've done the absolute best job you can and you have to trust what you've done. If there's something that you just can't trust, well then the question is why? If you don't trust your uprights on your car because they haven't been crack tested in 5 years, then you should have crack tested them. Because that could break if it's a known quantity and end your day. And it's going to slow you down as a driver. And if it's not, you're a jerk because you're endangering yourself, your own property, and other people. Okay? Hey, we all do the best we can, and not everybody's perfect, but it's just something to think of in that regard. But there comes a point where you have to be able to compartmentalize your mind, whether you're flying an airplane, or you're a military pilot, or a race car driver, or you're sailing on a tall ship, that you've done the best job you can, your equipment is good enough, their components are good enough, it's been done right, you've checked all the systems, they're all checking out right, you can control it, and then you just go do your job. And hopefully, along the way, if you can't find it to be fun because there's too much at stake and it takes too much of you to do it, that at least you find it rewarding. And if you've done those things, you have your best chance of success. I didn't go to school for building cars because there's no school that, quite frankly, teaches you this much this fast if you really want to be successful. I'm not saying there isn't somewhere you can start, but there's these places called libraries, and there's people called mentors, or you can like make friends with mechanics. That's what I did. And you just learn as fast as you possibly can on your own. So it really is up to you. And the thing about Genius Garage, the biggest takeaway for all the young people that doesn't get taught in school is this. And this is the secret to success of everybody in history that's done incredible things. And it's a secret to Genius Garage students' success. And it's a secret to my success in the past. It isn't that we just magically possess the knowledge to do these things. When we had the Indy car in Genius Garage the first year, I had never worked on an Indy car. And neither had the students. Every time we have students in here, and do a project, it has never been done by those students before. And there's no school to qualify you to do that. Before we made the pterosaur up there, no one had done that. There's no school to qualify for you to do that. So how do you do it if you don't already know how? It's because you know how to think. And I want you to ponder that statement. Learning how to think. Learning how to look at things. Because if you figure that out, very few things will stand in your way in the future. I'm going to leave that right there. That's up for you guys to figure out. If you want to know more, or you got questions, or I didn't explain it well enough, please comment below. I look forward to that. And as always, I hope you will like, comment, and subscribe. And frankly, if you share it, that's helpful too. So if you like what's going on, help me build this channel, and we can share great wisdom for young people and car people all over the world. I will catch you guys next time.